This is a really good question. I give the SAT some credit here. It's a good mixture of like simple things that we need to memorize, things that we always need to come back to, and also just like a little harder fact that we need to memorize. So I'm going to say that that's our strategy here, is we really do need to memorize formulas. Now, the first formula we should memorize is kind of more of a get back to basics idea. There's no excuse for not having memorized this. We're going to need y equals mx plus b, the equation of a line, because look at what we have here. We have two lines, right? So we know we're going to need this equation. We should write it on our page, get it out of your head on the page so we can start plugging things in. So what do I see? Well, I know that if I'm going to end up with point P, I probably need to start with line, that's not what I meant to do, line L. Because mostly, why would they give it to me, right? So I think that I'm going to need K seconds that I can get P last, right? So I can kind of see a process here. They wouldn't have given me L if I didn't need it, and so I'm kind of going to start with that. So let's find the equation of L. What do I know? Well, I know the y-intercept. It's 0, so I can just plug that in, or I can just leave it off. And I know a point, right? So I can use my favorite strategy, plug points into equations. So we have a y value of 3 and an x value of 4. So we can kind of just now solve for m. So remember, the 0 goes away, and then we would just divide by 4. So we would get that the slope of this line is 3/4. So the equation, just to back up, is 3/4 x. Now, why is that important? Well, in order to get k, we're going to probably have to use this fact that the slopes are perpendicular. So what does that mean? So perpendicular slopes are negative reciprocals. Okay, negative reciprocals. So let's just be clear. This is line L. Let's move on to line K. So we're going to use y equals mx plus b. We still pass through the point 4, 3. So we should still use that as the x and the y. We don't know the y-intercept. Look, it's all the way up here off of the screen, right? So we don't even care what it is ultimately, but we're going to need it for the sake of the equation. But we should be able to get the slope because we know that this line is perpendicular to line L. So if we know that the slope of L is 3/4, the negative reciprocal means we flip the fraction upside down and flip the sign. So the slope is going to be negative 4/3. So let me just write that here, just so it's in a couple places. 3/4 as a slope is perpendicular to negative 4/3. Flip it and reverse it. So now we have most of an equation, and just out of habit, we should solve for b because we can, and it probably can't hurt, so let's do it. So let's zoom in here. What do we got to do? We got to do some fraction multiplication. So that's going to be 3 is equal to negative 16/3 plus b. So we can add 16/3 to both sides. In fact, let me do this a little bit more neatly. And let's turn this into 3/3 or 9/3. So I know we have a calculator. I'm just, honestly, with fractions, I'd rather just do it by hand. So 16/3 plus 9/3 is equal to 25/3, which is equal to b. So now the equation of line K is y is equal to negative 4/3 x plus 25/3. Okay. And again, you have the calculator, feel free to use it. I'm just cruising along here. Final step then is let's find P. Okay, so P. So we use the same strategy we used before. Plug points into equations. We don't know the x coordinate of point P, but we know the y value, right? Y has to be 0 because it's on the axis. It's an intercept. So we can't plug in the full point, but we can at least plug in the half that we know. So that's the great thing about plug points into equations, is it's just very general. You have some aspect of a point, plug it into the equation. So 0 is equal to negative 4/3 x plus 25/3. So we're going to minus 25/3 from both sides. We get negative 25/3 is equal to negative 4/3 x. And then we multiply by -3/4 to cancel out everything on this side and get us an x. And then here I'm going to reduce the 3's. I'm going to get rid of the negatives. 25/4. And if we put that into our calculator, well, 4 goes into 25 6 times with 1/4 left over. So that is 6.25, which is D, which is the answer. It's a lot. It's a lot for one question. So that's what makes it hard. I mean, it's number 30 and then no calc. So this is a good example of like, it's supposed to be hard. We should expect this to be either tricky or tedious. And so this is, I think, along the tedious side of things. There's just like a lot of steps. And so you just got to power through them. If you have only a few minutes left, this is a good question to just like pick your favorite answer, pick your favorite letter, move on to the grid ends, make sure you get those points because a lot of those questions are going to be easier and faster. So you want to get, 3 or 4 grid ends, right, is worth 40 points, whereas this one question is only worth 10. So it's all about putting your resources, your time, where you're going to get the most points. I will say, though, that everything that we did is something that you need to know how to do for the SAT in general. So the most important things, y equals mx plus b, plugging points into equations, building the equations of lines. Even if you have no idea why that's going to help, it's just a good thing to do when a question involves lines. Odds are very high it's a step somewhere in the process, even if you don't immediately see why it's going to help you. So just do it anyway, especially if you're confused. The other piece, though, this negative reciprocal thing, perpendicular slopes, it's about 50-50 that comes up on your SAT. If you know it, then you can get that question right. If you don't, there's really no way to figure it out in the moment. You're kind of screwed. So you really should try to memorize that if you're looking for a top score, because if it comes up, you really just need to know it or you won't get the points. Really good question. Just a lot of stuff and, power through, show your work, and hopefully you get it.